Hey guys, how's it going? I'm going to be going over the new Wizard101 update, the Nightmare Dungeon that came out recently. I've wanted to go over this update like earlier, but before I recorded and did anything, I wanted to know everything for 100% sure. Now that I'm all caught up and like fully aware of all the changes, this is now the time for me to record a video and explain to you guys the update. So first and foremost, the elephant in a room. The Nightmare Dungeon has come out. It is a dungeon that functions like a mini raid, and it is a very difficult dungeon because there are various obstacles, right? You guys can check it out. There was a contest on World's First. It is already over, but that's pretty cool at the fact that they had it. And it drops the entire Dream Reaver gear and the Dream Stalker gear. And as of right now, it is only in challenge mode, but a standard mode is intended to be released very soon, so you guys can go check that out. And now the next update are brand new stat caps, so I'm gonna put them up on the screen right here. So here are all the new stat caps. You can pause this video and read them as you like. And basically, well, they're just as insane as ever. I don't have too many thoughts about them, except they're slightly more balanced, I guess, compared to the previous stat caps. But they're still pretty crazy. You know, firing at 60 AP, that's a lot, but you know, it is what it is. So yeah, I mean, you can interpret the stats however you like, so you can look them up. And in terms of spells, every single blade and trap gambit got nerfed to the ground. I'll put them up right here. Right, so you can take a look. You can pause the video. And for some whatever reason, the shield gambits were buffed, right? So Death Oni, Myth Jin, and Ice Scion all got buffed. They all do a much higher amount of damage. I do not know why they would do that. It is a very unpopular thing. No one asked for it. Every single player essentially hates the shield gambits, including myself, for good reason, right? It is an easy setup. It's a 0 pip setup. It is way easier and better than all the other gambits, but for some reason they decided to buff those. But I digress. So I personally hope they revert the change. It is not good for those shield gambit buffs. Makes no sense for them to do 2,000 base damage with easy setups. They do more damage than all the other gambits now. Like even the ice one does more, the same as Storm Scion now, which is, again, it's atrocious. But so I really hope they reconsider this and they change up the shield gambits, because shielding is a lot better than shield countering. It's a lot cheaper than shield countering. So you can't even just like counter shields forever, because it just, if you even dare to counter a shield, they just put it right back on, and there you go. They gain pips, you lost pips. They got 11 pips, you die. Because they do 2 racks for some reason, but I hope it makes no sense. I really hope truly hope that they revert the change. It is not a good thing. As much as I want ice buffed, that is not the wave. Like that is not the way I wanted ice to be buffed. And that also means Death and Myth got buffed, which is definitely schools I did not want to see buffed at all. So in my view, please revert the shield gambits. It is dumb. However, the blade and trap gambits, so I do like. Their damage got nerfed. Instead of them being double, it is like 1.4 or whatever. The multiplier is a lot lower. It is good. It stops PvE strats. And even without PvE strats, I always hated these gambit spells. Any way to make them weaker or less relevant is always a good thing to me. Yeah, I don't like it for raids and the new Nightmare for dungeon for sure. Yeah, I'm not a fan of it for when it comes to raids, but for PvP wise, I do like it. Right, I do like all the nerfs on these other gambits. I think it's a good thing. It makes the game a lot more interesting, makes people rely on them a lot less. And I always despised how overpowered they were. So I have nothing at all but good things to say, right? It destroys PvE strats for sure. Oh, and speaking of PvE strats, one of the most popular PvE strats has been completely obliterated off the face of this game. And that would be cosplaying. That's because your stat caps for different schools based on your DPP are different. And I'll put up the picture right here. So if you notice on the graph, On the left side is the school, and the colored side on the right side is all the damage that you can have for that particular school. So for example, an ice wizard can get 176 damage to ice, but they can only get 170 to death and balance because these schools have a little more DPP. And it can only get 83, I think it's 83. I'll correct myself in editing if it's wrong, but I think they can only get 83 damage to storm. So even if you're an ice wizard, you can only have 83 damage to storm. So you can no longer be a better storm on an ice, or more importantly, be a better storm on a death. That was the most popular form of cosplaying, or polymorphs, whatever you want to call it. No, but now deaths can only have about 100 and something, 116, 112 damage. I'll type it up. I'll put it up. So it's like in the low hundreds. That's the highest amount of storm damage a death can have to storm. Even though death can get 202 damage, that can only applies to death. They cannot get 202 storm damage. It's only that amount right there. However, though, this only applies to low DPP schools going into higher DPP schools. High DPP schools going into lower DPP schools does not get affected. You do not lose damage for off-schooling or dual schooling into a lower DPP school. Hence, that's why there's that blank on the graph. So if you see any blanks on the graph, that means that school can get the same damage for the other school as their own. So Storm, for example, since Storm is the highest DPP school in the game, they can get 207 damage to every school if they want. So they can off-school and dual school into any school they want. And because it's not as OP because the DPP is lower than theirs anyway. So no matter what school Storm dual schools against, they'll never do the same amount of damage as if they played regular Storm, because all the other schools have less DPP. All their spells do less damage. And you saw your Storm still, so you still have no HP, no res. You're still very squishy. You only have 55 or 56 res now. So you have all the weaknesses of a Storm, so it doesn't matter. So that's why they did it like this. And I think it's a great change. I think it's a decent change. Cosplaying, PvE, very annoying. So I'm glad that they're out the door. I'm glad they're out. Sorry, Idris, but you're gonna have to actually earn your rank. So these strats are out the door. So I think these are good changes. And now for specific spell changes, because some spells got specifically changed. All the Nova spells have a top path and a bottom path, and they have a tier 4. So as you see, this applies to all of them. So this spell got changed a little bit. So they have a their base version is just damage now, and you have to upgrade to a utility path on the bottom. So the utility no longer comes with this spell, you have to upgrade it. So all the Nova spells are just pure damage. Their utility path got nerfed in terms of damage, but the utility is a lot more powerful. And so good, in fact, in this spell in particular, that I've actually decided to pack it. I think this spell could be has potential. It could be better than Hydra sometimes. It gives a 65 shield. That is huge. That's actually kind of crazy. And the heal has a value amount, which means outgoing will increase that heal if you echo it, because it does have a value instead of just being a hot symbol. I think your outgoing, and I could be wrong though, but your outgoing might count. Iron Sultan got a giant buff. Its base damage went from 948 to 1092, which is really good actually. It is well deserved, and it brings me back some memories because fun fact, this base damage is the exact same base damage as the OG Scorching. I'm gonna put it up right here. So now Iron Sultan does the damage of OG Scorching Scimitars, right? Which was the second strongest 4-pip Shad. And it's barely weaker than its original form of 1152. It's barely weaker. I think that's a great change. I like it. And in fact, I think they should do that with all the schools. Like a piece of OG Wiz is back, in a way. They should do that with all the 4-pips. They should give them slight buffs. Like they all should get buffed. For all schools. The only thing with these spells is that the other schools should get like a bit of a buff. I think that's a good change. Oh, speaking of the Nova spell, Tree of Strife. For some reason, yeah, they buffed the utility, but they nerfed the damage on the utility path, so it's not as powerful. It used to do 845. Now it does 730. I guess top path will do 740. The heal actually has an amount. I'm not sure if outgoing counts. I haven't tested it yet. It might count, it might not count. For outgoing, I think it will. It is unfortunate they nerfed the damage of this spell. Like, this spell's high damage was like one of its highlights, and now that's out the door. It's just a slightly stronger counterland, but counterland has a better effect. I don't think they should have nerfed the damage at all. But and it requires a gamut to even get the utility going anyways. So versus this is absolutely free, and Catch It is absolutely free. I think the damage nerf on this was a mistake. And more storm stuff. Reap the Whirlwind now has a 55 blade. So I think this is actually a very good counter. Low key. Now you can bait out myths to use Stone Colossus, and then you pop that out, you take out the dot, and you get 255 blades, which is really awesome. I think it's better than Lightning Bats. For Storm, obviously. So if you were Storm, maybe carrying Lightning Bats, you'd want to Reap the Whirlwind. In fact, I'd rather use this over a Kraken if it's an unprotected dot. So let's say I get hit with a Bassi or Stone Colossus or a Frostbite. Like if I get an ice, they Frostbite me. I'm not gonna Kraken it. I'd much rather Reap the Whirlwind. These blades are just way too good. Now unless they have shields on, of course. But even if they don't, it's two of them, so I can just Elf, I can still have it. But yeah, so that's a decent change. And the next change for Storm is Triton. Triton got a bottom path buff, so it does more damage, and the blade is a bit more powerful. I don't know why they did that. I don't think it's that necessary. It already does a decent amount of damage, and the blades were already really strong, and the blades will just get bansheed anyways, so it's not that great. It's a very good hot counter, but it's only good against hot counters, so it's only good against regenerate. So its place in the meta hasn't really changed. You'll just do a little bit more damage against lives that regen, and you'll get a slightly better blade. That'll get yoinked away instantly anyways. Colossus got a slight buff. The Gambit on Colossus is now a 50 trap instead of a 35 like it used to be. Although it used to be a 65, and then it got nerfed to 35, and then it got buffed back up to 50. I don't know what they're doing. Can this make ice a little more viable? The fact that it requires 3 shields is a big no. This is still just a crappy ghoul, in my opinion. I think this card should either Gambit 3 shields to do more damage, or it should Gambit less shields for the traps. Kind of like ghoul, but maybe not exactly the same. Like maybe Gambit 1 shield for 2 traps, or 3 like 30 traps. They can make the traps weaker, but make them Gambit less shields, or less shields, less traps. They can do anything. And their traps, they're not blades, so Frostbite kind of messes that up anyways. I think it's a decent spell, but compared to a spell like Ghoul, it's just not good. Like, this spell should really just Gambit less shields. I don't think a higher trap value will just like really cut it. I don't think this spell is that great, because it just requires so much. But it's there, so Colossus got a nice buff. Also, Ice Speedo got a small buff. And by a small buff, I mean literally 5 damage. So it used to do 65 damage with the 65 shield. Now it does 70. Whoop-de-woo. So enjoy that, Ice Wizards. Yeah, there's your ice buff. Like an underperforming school, a terrible school in the meta. And what it gets is, it gets 5 damage and 15 traps. I mean, this sound buff, yeah, that's insane. The only real good buff for ice is Scion, though that's not one I would have wanted, because these Gambit spells are stupid. As much as I like ice being buffed in anyway, this change is stupid. They could have done a better job by a long shot. And I know there's some other spell changes as well, right there, but basically all the Nova spells do damage, and they do more damage than they used to on their top path. And on the bottom path, it what's it called? Oh yeah, it has the utility. And there's also a brand new pack. There's a brand new pack that did some openings. It's spoiler alert for you guys, it is not good. don't bother unless you want the hat. The only good piece of gear is the hat. It goes with the Skyfarer template. So all the gear will be Skyfarer, but with a slight upgrade. Well, except the resist for some reason, because it's for balance, because it's less. I think it's dumb. I think it's dumb that this hat gives less res than the balance hat. But whatever, I think it's still better. But only I will go for the hats. Do not go for the other pieces of gear. They are trash. They are not good. Do not bother. And only go for this hat on certain schools. I think Borer would still be better. Borer, whatever it is, and for other schools. But if you're running any Skyfarer gear, you should open this pack. Oh, and guess for Pip Conserve decks. So they give triangle decks for Pip Conserve. So they basically just an upgraded Skyfarer pack. So if you do want that, so this pack is there. It gives a pretty cool mount as well. That gives 50 speed. That's really cool. But other than that, though, this pack is mostly trash, except for a couple pieces of gear. Maybe the hat, maybe the decks if you're doing like a Pip Conserve setup. But that's about it. Everything else is trash. So I wouldn't bother spending too many crowns on this pack. And that's it. So that is this update. So I just wanted to record this video, let you guys know what's up. I thought the updates. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.